Well. Shopping for a car?
Yep, Carvana made financing a car as smooth as can be.
Oh, yeah?
I got pre-qualified instantly and had real terms personalized just for me.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
Well, I got to browse thousands of car options on Carvana, all within my budget.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
It does. I actually wanted a car that seemed out of my range, but I was able to add a cosigner and found my dream car.
It doesn't get much...
Oh, it gets smoother. It's getting delivered tomorrow.
Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get pre-qualified today.
Don't just dream about paradise. Live it with Fiji Airways. Escape the ordinary with Fiji Airways Cyber Monday sale. Immerse yourself in white sandy beaches or dive deep into coral reefs. Fiji Airways has flights to Nadi starting at just $719 for light and just $749 for value. Discover your tropical dreams at FijiAirways.com. That's FijiAirways.com. From here to happiness, flying direct with Fiji Airways.
In times of old, in times of new, there's a guide to follow to make it true. It's the pop culture field, and
Today's topic of all topics. Now, don't be confused. You probably ask yourself, Cam and Izzy, you did medieval madness not too long ago. You were correct, my friends, but what we really didn't dive into is just the brutality that is medieval combat.
Yes.
So that's what we're going to talk about today.
I'm very excited for this topic because it makes me appreciate that I live in the modern era with, combat, war has always been brutal. Man killing other men. It's always been
brutality,
rough and brutal. Yeah, all the brutality and the horror, the blood, guts, and gore. It's just it's a mainstay of humanity since Cain killed Abel. Yeah. But man, living in the modern era, at least I think in advances, especially of medicine, we like the survivability rate in a battle is a lot higher than it used to be back then. Oh, yeah. And so talking about all of these, with the armor and the weapons that they used back then, man, it's just like you had to like hack and slash and chop pieces off of other dudes, and they're like screaming and shout. The one thing I think of is, you ever read Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield?
No.
It's more of a grounded retelling of the Battle of Thermopylae with the 300.
Okay.
Spartans and stuff, and the Persians. Yeah. So it's like there's 300, which is like kind of the kind of wild, crazy imagery and fantastical retelling. Gates of Fire by Stephen Pressfield is more like grounded, and he does a good job of talking about the smell specifically, because dudes, like, if they get afraid, they'll just like wet themselves.
Yeah, they piss themselves. Yeah. And in my medical experience, like, if someone's hurt, they're probably going to shit themselves as well. Yeah. So just describing the smell back there. That's bodies, really good.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. So when we talk about ancient warfare, the smell of ancient warfare is something that I often think about. And you would have more expertise or more experience in terms of the smell of decay, of dead and decaying and injured human bodies than I would.
Yeah, no, it's I can never eat steak again. No, it's very weird what like a burning body smells like. It smells identical to a ribeye on the barbecue. Yeah. So now it's weird having your mouth water watching a bird, like treating a burn wound. There you go. Sick joke number one. They're coming.
Hammer's a cannibal.
Yeah. No, but yeah, it's a lot of people don't consider those elements. Like, back in the Dizzy in medieval times, like, we didn't really have plumbing systems. Showers weren't a huge luxury. You couldn't flip a switch and have hot water immediately. So you'd walk down the street and, I didn't live back then, but I would say it's safe to assume that you would just see just buckets of poo and pee just being thrown out of windows. And if you might have caught a little backslash and it just stunk. Yeah. But one thing I do realize with like stinkiness is when I went through ranger school, we all smelled like death and decay. Like when you get to Florida phase, like you just don't smell it anymore. And like
you're just in it.
Yeah, because you're just in it and it becomes normal. So I could guess that like back then they'd like if you were, a piece of royalty and you came to a village, you'd be like, oh, this smells like crap. But then all the villagers would be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like, because they live in it. And you can really smell it. The craziest thing about when dudes would come back from ranger school, myself included, is like they would shower, they would clean themselves, right? And they put on their normal clean clothes. But for at least like a week or two, they would just smell like I can't even describe. It was just like chemically, they would smell like bleach. It would be like an ammonia smell. And it was just
Ah,
because their body breaking down,
yeah, yeah, like
their
the
body's
sweat,
eating their
the sweat
muscle.
dry. Yeah, yeah, and then I get that. I know
Yes.
what you're talking about.
So you would, even if you cleaned yourself or anything, but your body would just seep this odor of decay. Because you've reached the point of starvation to where your body's starting to eat muscle. It's like it's run out of fat. Like that's why dudes are like bone skinny. So they would just have this like ammonia natural body smell. So I could only imagine it was like a mix between ammonia, poo, and PE,
Yeah,
sweat, just everything in between. And that's not very cleanly. So no wonder you get a paper cut. You're like, that's it. I'm dead.
yep,
I'm
pretty much
septic
done.
immediately.
Yeah, everybody dies at like 35, or
Yeah.
people live very long.
Yeah,
Well,
but
just for clarity's sake, when we talk about the Middle Ages, the medieval times, I think it's generally accepted that it's somewhere kind of after the fall of the Roman Empire. I'm looking at something that says like 400s AD
to like
late 400s AD.
1400s,
Yes,
right?
exactly. About
Yeah.
1,000 years, they say. That's like they call it the Dark Ages or the medieval times or
Medieval
whatever. Middle
times.
Ages, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But before we go any further, I just want to say, yo, folks, thanks for joining us. But if you want more out of this content and you love it, be sure to check out our Patreon. It is a growing and awesome community. We have 3 subscription tiers that offer you exclusive content as well as additional episodes that the general public doesn't have access to.
Plebeians.
The plebs, the peasants, to stay on topic, the dirty peasants don't have access to. But also, if you're our highest tier, which is the Lifer tier, you have access to a monthly live stream movie stream with Izzy and I, where we sit down and watch a blockbuster favorite that you guys get to choose. And we just have a really good time. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out our Patreon as well as our merchandise. We have awesome PCFM merchandise in our Instagram bio. So if you're interested in picking you up a PCFM shirt, hoodie, mug, maybe a couple stickers, maybe some interior furniture like pillows, we have that all on the shop. So if that interests you, check it out. And if you weren't interested in becoming a Patreon before, Patrons get 20% off that merchandise. So go ahead and check that out. And back to it, huh?
Yeah, man. Well, you want to go over like some basics when it comes to medieval. We're talking specifically about European, right? Medieval times, knights, what they wore, where they, where they were from, and the kinds of the weapons and equipment that they had with them,
Yeah. No, I think it's just some fun facts.
Yeah.
About medieval armor and weapons. So, I mean, to start it off, like, it's really funny nowadays. We have like all this high tech equipment, but like people still say like, oh, my plate carrier and helmet setup is so heavy.
Yeah.
Like my new level 4 plates are way lighter than, my level 3s with my inserts, with my soft armor inserts. And like they would weigh what? They'd weigh what? Like 25, 26 pounds.
Right.
And then your helmet and then your rifle. I mean, the heaviest thing you really carry is a rucksack. Which that can get heavy, but just like, it was very few times that I would wear a rucksack and a plate carrier at the same time. So if you're just like doing the job, like doing a raid or an assault, you're pretty much just going to be in plate carrier and helmet, and that can get heavy. But comparing it to a complete suit of armor that a knight in the just to target an era right here, 13th and 14th century specifically, weighed about 30 to 35 kilograms, which is roughly over 70 pounds. So this may seem really heavy, but a knight was absolutely conditioned to carry his equipment from childhood. So like that's like 70 pounds at all times distributed all over your body. And it takes a lot of time to don and doff that. So I'm assuming once you're in it, there's no coming out of it for a long time because it takes like, assistants to strap all the buckles and put on
Right.
all the mail and attach all your gauntlets and everything. Or put your gauntlets on and attach all the buttons and buckles. And yeah, it's not like an easy, ripping some Velcro off and then doffing it. And you're like, oh, it's
Yeah.
like, Squire, come help
Squire.
me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you had
Squire.
squires, man.
Squire. Yeah, Squire.
Squire. I require
Doff my armor. Yeah.
Squires
Absolutely
were
insane.
usually knights in training too, right?
Yeah,
Like they were kind of on their way,
They were like Padawans, I'm pretty sure.
little Padawan learners.
Little Padawan Jedi. Instead of being Jedi Knights, they were just Padawans. So that was like squires. So they would assist. They would assist the knights, and they would be trained underneath them until they could be granted their knighthood.
Do you think they just? Do you think, according to research we've done, do you think they just kind of keep it on for like weeks on end?
I don't know,
Traveling
man.
Crusader Knights and stuff like that. I feel like that might have been the way that it goes.
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe that's just maybe that's a misconception. You guys can let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that like because there were no cars back then. We didn't have vehicles to get us far. They had horses. So I would think that like if you were riding into battle or even just riding, like you had pouches on your horse and everything. But would you just be in full armor at all times just in case you were just prepared, just in case there was an ambush ahead?
Right.
Like, did they have preferences of which armor? Because I know like chainmail weighed less, but also gave less protection to, to blunt force and all that. Like, would they have preferences of armor they would wear depending on the situation? That's something for me because, in the current military, we have, preferences of, if we're doing if we're on a reconnaissance, we're going to wear chest rigs and boonie caps.
Yeah.
Like we're not going to wear helmets and plate carriers because that weighs us down. We have a heavy ruck. But if we're going, if contact is very likely and we're doing like a raid, we're going to be plate carriered up and all that. So I wonder if they had their own preferences like that on what armor they're going to wear.
Yeah. Oh, it's interesting. I think maybe they just were in it for a long time, they would just like in their armor go and like sit in a stream or something like that.
Yeah.
To wash off. I don't know. It's interesting to think about. What about weapons and stuff like that? This is where we get like this. You always think about like the maces. Like I'm starting to get a little bit into the exercising, swinging.
Yeah.
Stuff,
Are you doing that ball? What's it called again? That thing? It's
now the one thing that I have is it's called an RMT club. It's a specifically designed kind of club, but it's basically the maces, where you swing it around, or the things that look like bowling pins.
Yeah. Okay, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, and it's a lot of fun, man. But it's really that kind of practical movements, right?
Yeah.
And very much so. Back in the day, you were swinging around clubs and maces and morning stars, and all that kind of stuff for that core. I'm sure that even though they didn't maybe have like, I don't know if like in formal exercise routines for their standing armies or whatever. But I'm sure a lot of these dudes were really hardy. Like they probably walked everywhere or rode everywhere, which takes its own like kind of form of core control. But then they're practicing all the time, and as long as they don't have any injuries, I'm sure they got a strong core, strong shoulders, strong hips.
Yeah, that was one thing I'm wondering because like, I feel like there's a common misconception that like the knight back then was like scrawny and not very, because there was no gyms, there was no workout equipment.
Right,
I know.
right.
One thing I will say though is they did do exercise. I would assume they did exercise because when I went to Pompeii in Italy, the village that Mount Vesuvius, when it erupted, completely engulfed, multiple movies on it, but regardless, they had a quote unquote gymnasium for people to like do exercises and keep themselves health and fit. And this was in Italy way back when.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming they had like workout routines, and they're training with their weapons because some of them were heavier than others. I was actually kind of disappointed because I was like, what are some heavy weapons? Like swords needed to be heavy, like the claymore that's used in Braveheart by William Wallace. Like that thing is a mega sword, and I was like, that thing must weigh like 20 pounds. And I was actually disappointed because I researched it and I looked into it, and they're like, the claymore was around 6 feet long and it weighed 5.5 pounds. And I was like, ah! I was like, damn, I wanted that thing to be like an absolute brute. But I was excited to find, because speaking of like big weapons and heavy weapons, the Grote I hope I'm saying this right. It's either Grote or Grote Pierre sword. You ever heard of that?
I haven't heard of this one. This
Okay.
looks like a beast.
Yeah, it is an absolute monster of a weapon. So the Grote Pierre sword is the largest European sword ever to be used in combat, almost 7 feet long and weighing 15 pounds. So
Wow.
yeah, so basically, 15 pounds on a dumbbell you don't think is that heavy, but when you take 15 pounds and you increase the the size of it, it becomes way heavier than what it feels like
Right.
because it's all concentrated in one area. But over a long distance, that sword is like super heavy. You try picking up a 10-foot sledgehammer by the very end and trying to pick it up at the top, it's like way harder than grabbing it at the center of the weight.
Yes.
Yeah, so imagine swinging that around. But the coolest fact about this sword is it was literally wielded by a giant.
Yeah.
And he was a real guy. His name was Pierre Golofs Dania. He was in what was the Netherlands before it became like very Netherlandy in a way. It became the Netherlands, but before it was all that. And he was famous for wielding this blade. And it was said that he was a giant among men and that he wielded this sword with ease and could effortlessly, behead numerous foes in combat with this 7-foot blade. And he was said to be 2.15 meters tall. So he was 7 foot tall way back when.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You just had to be gifted. I think you just have to be naturally, genetically gifted, to not only be that tall, but to still be healthy and stuff too. I guess we always assume with the medieval period is that it was just the dirtiest, most downtrodden time and stuff. I don't think that's entirely true, but I think that kind of after the fall of the Roman Empire and stuff, a lot of stuff was maybe lost, knowledge was lost. But anyway, all that to say, talking about hygiene and diet and stuff, probably just a lot of meats, maybe a lot of vegetables, a lot of breads. Yeah. Whatever was available in your little kind of area. I know that knights not only they were kind of I'd liken them to samurai or samurai to knights in that they had to obviously they had to have horsemanship, right? Martial horsemanship, combat on a horse, hand-to-hand combat in their armor and stuff too. But as I recall, a lot of them came from royalty.
Yeah, so
so they were learned people. They knew poetry. They knew courtly, whatever the courtly thing, standing a certain way. I don't know.
yeah, just
being in the court,
manner, just being well-mannered gentlemen.
Yes, there you go. Yeah, that's I'm trying to think of the proper
courtly
word for it. Yeah, being courtly.
No, I believe you're absolutely right. I'm pretty sure a lot of the knights wore titled lords. So they all came from distinguished families. I think it was very far and few in between to find a knight that came from peasantry.
Mm-hmm.
Their hierarchy back in the day was extremely strict. And correct us if we're wrong on this one, but yeah, typically knights would come from wealth or come from some distinguished family line. But yeah, you've talked about HEMA quite a bit on this podcast. So why don't you tell me a little bit, or tell the listeners a little bit what HEMA is, just in case they missed that. Because a lot of these facts I actually pulled off the HEMA website.
Oh yeah, man. HEMA's great, man. I'm a fan of history anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Just the more you know, the more you grow. And HEMA stands for Hermanus Historical European Martial Arts. When we think about martial arts, when you hear the phrase martial arts, you automatically think of Eastern martial arts, kung fu movies, and karate, and jeet kune do and stuff. But obviously, Europeans have been fighting each other since the very beginning too.
Just banging each other with hammers. That's it. Yeah, that's what we all assume.
Exactly. Just up until bam, we were in castles.
Yeah.
But historic European martial arts is kind of this rediscovering of European forms of fighting that have kind of been lost. A lot of times when we see medieval movies that take place in that time period, at least, or with that kind of feel, a lot of it ends up being kind of more like fencing based.
Yeah.
And the idea of joint locks and throws, or using more than just the hilt of the sword, the handle of the sword, using many parts of the sword to do different kinds of things, blocks, jabs, joint, like grappling and throwing with the weapon itself, with the sword itself. All these things, through the discovery, I think they looked at like ancient tomes, even French, Italian, German. They, all these things could be formalized, and if you were looking to learn and grow and stuff, there were a lot of like scholars that went around and studied these things, and formalized and put them into pictures. So HEMA has kind of sought to bring those things back to the current generation, these forms of fighting. And it's cool, man, that clubs have sprung up all over, and there's tournaments. There's even a, let's see, I think there's even, it's almost like a UFC type thing. The International Medieval Combat Federation started in 2014. And it's like tournaments basically where they're going at each other. And I've watched a couple of these things. It looks cool, man. It's almost like strongman competitions, with these big beefy dudes, just big corn-fed bros from like, France
from
and
Iowa.
Germany. Yeah. And Iowa. Yeah. It's usually bigger dudes too, because they kind of have a weight advantage, but they do these events. And there was even like a reality show. I forget what it was called.
It was like Lancers or something like that.
Oh, that's a different one that I heard.
Really?
This one was like, it was one-on-one a tournament, and it would go throughout the day, and eventually guys would get eliminated. And then the last two dudes who had been fighting all day would face off against each other.
Tired as hell.
Freaking, worn out. But HEMA is really fun. My brother was in a HEMA club for a while, and it's a lot like, it's like a social club where you get together for practices and you learn all the different forms and stuff like that. And then there's tournaments you can go to. And so it's cool. It's a nice little kind of community-based thing, especially if you're more into, a lot of people like getting back into your heritage, right? Like your ethnic heritage or your national heritage. That has been something that has kind of reinvigorated some parts of like European heritage specifically, which I think it can be like a really good thing, like the martial arts styles. Just a little bit of my research here is one of the martial arts studies studied by Knights was called L'Art d'Armiser, but it's the Italian one, so forgive me if I mispronounce any of this stuff. And then another one, the German one, is Kunst des Fuchens. Yeah.
I think it's Fechens.
Yeah. Oh, okay. The
Kunst
art
des
of fencing.
Fechens. The art of fencing.
But man, HEMA's really cool. There's a lot of cool stuff. If you want to go onto YouTube and you type in historic European martial arts fight scenes, if you type in HEMA, you get some other stuff. But if you type it out and then say fight scenes, there's some cool coolly. Man, I can't talk today. There are some very impressively choreographed fight scenes that are kind of standalone fight scenes that people have put together to kind of recreate what it might have been like to either duel or to like to do it in real life. And I think there's a couple, there might be a couple examples that we can come up with of movies that have tried to integrate HEMA-like battle techniques.
I have one right off the top of my mind that I think we've talked about this movie before. It's not a very good movie, but it's not one of Ridley Scott's finest works. But I will say the final battle in The Last Duel, like a lot of dialogue, a lot of, just a lot of boring things happening. But the final battle between Adam Driver and Matt Damon, I think is out of all the medieval combat scenes I've ever seen, I think it is one of the most authentic and like, do you know what I'm talking about? The scene?
Yeah, the last one when they're the actual duel itself.
Yeah, the actual duel. The duel
it goes in stages. They start jousting, and then they get to hand, and then they're like on the ground, just duking it out.
Scrapping. But like the way, back in the day, like you started off this podcast by saying they had to hack and slash and everything. And wearing armor, like weapons were way lighter than you thought, and especially wearing steel and chainmail. Like hitting somebody with a sword, it hurt, but it didn't do anything. It wouldn't kill them immediately. So like
Right.
in this scene, they are like hacking each other. They are slashing each other. They are using the hilt of the sword. Like they're grabbing with their gauntlets, they're grabbing the blade and using it as
Right.
like a pull weapon, and things you like typically don't see in usual movies, because like nobody grabs the actual blade and then hits
Right.
with the hilt,
Yep.
right? But that's all featured in that last scene.
Yep.
And I rewatched it again because I was like, oh, I'll give this. I'm just gonna skip through all the BS, all the allegations, all that stuff. That just is
Yeah.
a lot of political prowess, and just went straight to the end and rewatched the scene. And oh my god, I was like, to be honest, this last scene like saved the entire movie. I think it's one of the most accurate. It's one of the accurate depictions of like military in medieval combat I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah, man. I really like the gritty nature of it. And like you say, the how they use that kind of HEMA stuff with like grabbing the blade and like turning it around and hitting with the other part of it, or doing like joint locks and throws.
Yeah,
Because like you say, a lot of other stuff. It's like this kind of very kind of graceful, almost ballistic, kind of fencing type aspect to it. But you use your whole body, use everything that you got. And yeah, I thought that's probably the best example, I think. And that's a fairly recent movie where they kind of integrated that in there. I wonder if I could look up real quick who the last duel, who the
stunt
consultant.
coordinator was,
Yeah.
or the
Yeah.
consultant.
Cool.
While you do that, I have a completely sidetrack. When you were talking about that, remember how I mentioned that jousting show?
Yeah.
They were like, oh, well, it's actually called Full Metal Jousting. It was like a 2012
Oh.
reality show about dudes that they don't do the one-on-one combat, but they feature actual real life jousting, and like they just get really screwed up and hurt all the time. I think it did like one season, but on like Discovery or something, or maybe like, let's see, it was on Full Metal Jousting reality TV. Where did it had 12 episodes, 11 episodes. Yeah, one season. I don't remember which network it was on, but it was probably on something like Spike.
It's
One
one of
of
those
those
kinds
shows.
of premises that sounds kind of cool, but the execution of it, it's like you say, there's probably a big turnover when it comes to contestants, because you're doing that stuff. You do one thing wrong, you twisted your ankle, you broke your elbow, or broke your hand or your collarbone. It's all the kind of injuries could ensue, to where it's like, all right, we have no contestants for next season.
Yeah, literally. Okay, they're all hurt. So what are we gonna do? Just kind of,
Yeah,
just kind of cancel it. But did you find out who the consultant
Robert
was?
Inch is
Inch.
the one.
Give him an
credited with
inch,
being
and
the
he'll take a
stork.
mile.
Now he'll take the whole movie, but he's the stunt coordinator that it looks like they used for the last duel, and then it looks like he has a team that he works with, but I'm sure that's where they get their authenticity from. But yeah, man, last duel, very.
That's an accurate one.
Yeah, that's a good one, man. That's but what it makes me think about other movies like Excalibur from like the 1980s, 1981 Excalibur. I like they do a good job of showing the cumbersome nature of the odd armor, but then also like how they're hitting each other. It's really just like hacking and slide, no like form or anything to it, but how it doesn't like just cut through limbs and stuff like you say. You've got padding, and then you've got chainmail, and then you've got plate mail on top of that. Man, you really had to. It was probably more.
Well. Shopping for a car?
Yep, Carvana made financing a car as smooth as can be.
Oh, yeah?
I got pre-qualified instantly and had real terms personalized just for me.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
Well, I got to browse thousands of car options on Carvana, all within my budget.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
It does. I actually wanted a car that seemed out of my range, but I was able to add a cosigner and found my dream car.
It doesn't get much...
Oh, it gets smoother. It's getting delivered tomorrow.
Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get pre-qualified today.
You probably know the feeling. Sweaty, fast breathing, quick heart rate. That's a cortisol spike. It feels awful, and its imbalance is the cause of your anxiety. Rebalance Health's 3-part anxiety system helps address it at the root. Rebalance Health lozenges are natural and designed for optimal absorption, providing 24-hour relief. Live life fully without feeling like you're fighting for it. Get 50% off your first month with code CALM23 at rebalancehealth.com.
Knocking
an
them
issue of
unconscious,
knocking
yeah.
them out, knocking them down and stuff like that, and then you find hopefully like a chink in the armor,
Yeah.
and you kind of
And like
slide in
stab
there,
them in the
so.
face or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. One
But,
other thing about the last duel is like they don't just use like weapons and everything. There's one part where he utilizes his horse. Like the horse gets stabbed by the lance, and the horse like lands on, I think it's Adam Driver or Matt Damon, and like it lands on Matt Damon, and he like Adam Driver's trying to smack him with the sword and like bust his head open.
Yeah.
And Matt Damon like smacks the horse's ass, and it like bucks
Oh.
and completely kicks Adam
Yeah.
Driver in the face, and then it gets up and he's like free. And I'm like, that was training. You know, who in the hell would have like come up with that? Be like, I can't defend myself, so I'm gonna slap my horse to use it as a range weapon. And
Yeah,
like,
I kind of did a little bit of I tried to do a little bit of reading on the actual event because I was not very impressed with the movie overall.
Yeah.
I was like, what happened, and stuff. And that one guy, the guy who Matt Damon plays, if there was one thing that everything points to is that he was supposed to be like a really good fighter. Like maybe he wasn't the most well-read guy or the highest noble or whatever, but he was always said to be really good at fighting.
Do you know what blew my mind? Just going off on a new thing. Like we talked about sword, we talked about armor and all that stuff, but like one of the most used weapons back then was the bow and arrow. And like,
Oh yeah.
and bow and arrows, the ones we have today are super impressive, but like some of them that are, just made for hunting, they have like a 60-pound, 80-pound pull. But the heavier pull your bow has, the more force it's going to generate, and the arrow is going to have a higher velocity and penetrate more and be able to go through, chainmail armor. Because that's what chainmail was. Wasn't it intended for bow and arrow? Chainmail was to stop the penetration.
That, to eat that.
Yeah. So
I don't know, man. It's interesting what innovations come up due to like technology and conflict. It's interesting how war and conflict has spurned innovations because it's like we got to find better ways to kill each other, and we got to find better ways to heal from being killed, from being wounded by each other. And that longbow was one of those innovations that really was like, if you had good longbows, you could really take your enemy out at a distance, and it would go a lot better for you generally for a long time. And then until another innovation would come along, and then another one, and then another one.
Yeah. And this is another one of those weapon systems that, going back to the beginning when we were talking about like, oh, dudes were scrawny back then, they weren't very strong, like they didn't lift, bro. This is another reason why I'm like starting to convince myself that these dudes were just stronger than oxes back then. Because like the lifestyle, right? There was a lot of heavy lifting. Like if you're a poor, just labor class citizen, you are carrying bales of hay, barrels of water. You're pretty much doing farmer carries everywhere. Like the amount of physical work. Like you ever meet like a super blue collar dude, and he's just like practically super strong, just because
they're like he's a bit of a gut, but he's like rock hard.
Yeah, just from doing actual practical lifts and picking heavy stuff up and putting it down, but not in a gym. So that's kind of my idea of what these warriors were like, because, I found this fact about longbows. I'm just going to read it verbatim because it's extremely impressive. But longbows used for war required massive amounts of strength. Typical war bows were constructed from yew, so the type of wood was yew when available, but elm was used as a secondary in case yew wasn't available. But the draw weight of all of them got heavier as armor everywhere improved. So the draw weights typically used for hunting bows was up to 60 pounds. So you needed to be able to pull 60 pounds, but obviously there's different techniques back there. Like you're not just pulling with your rear arm, you're pushing forward with your other arm, and then you're pulling and you're splitting the difference. But hunting bows are up to 60 pounds, which, is a pretty heavy pull on a longbow. And war bows were double or triple the hunting weight are similar. Until the Mary Rose finds, even English bows were thought to be lighter than those, estimated to be most at 140 to 160 and a few 185-pound draw weights. And as it was a flagship, that may be an elite crew and not average. The craziest thing here is Mongolian bows at about the same times are documented to be as heavy as 166, and later Turkish and Manchu bows max out heavier up to 240 pounds of
Dang, man.
pull.
Dang.
Like, and you're not just shooting one arrow,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
This is where like reps come into play. Like you're shooting as many as you can. Could you imagine pulling 180 pounds as much as you can just all day and night on horseback, on different angles? Like
Yeah.
these dudes were strong. Like
I mean, apparently, you look at old. There's this kind of controversy about, the accuracy of ancient archers and what they were able to do, like the feats of with their bows that they were able to accomplish. Because there's all these drawings of, Turkish or Mongolian bowmen on horseback or falling off a horseback and shooting an arrow and stuff. There's it goes back and forth because there's a dude that says all this stuff was real and he's like recreated it, and then other people say no, that guy's faking it. He's not really, he's not using the right stuff or whatever. But I would like to think, we talk about the 10,000 hour rule. If you like becoming an expert at something,
you got to do something for 10,000
in your life. You don't, in these times when we didn't have as many distractions as we do in the modern age, and not as much comfort, and you're doing one thing, like you do your bow. You're a bowman. You're an archer. That's all you do day in, day out. That's all you train for and stuff like that. I totally believe that they would be as good as kind of the ancient tales say that they were. It's just like we kind of get the chronological snobbery when we say, well, we live in this modern age and we have iPhones. Surely the ancient peoples couldn't do the things that we think they could do. They probably could, because it's just like that focused training. You do something enough, you can get really good at it. And then if you're smart or you have a certain, you get that certain freedom or temperament or personality, you start innovating. You start saying, well, what else can we do? people have always been creative like that, especially when it comes to killing.
Exactly. Yeah. Business is booming.
That's right.
But the longbows, because then you had the invention of the crossbow. Because like you think about hours put in, like days and time and effort put into learning a skill. Like the longbow, according to my research when I was going through it, looking at all this shit, I was like, they were saying that, to master the longbow took years. Not like it wasn't an easy weapon to teach. It's not just something anybody could pick up and use. It would literally take years because they would have to develop the strength. Then once they have the strength, they would have to develop their precision and accuracy, and shooting from mounted, shooting from not. It's kind of reminds me of the military. It's like we have to work all these different types of training to just be effective with our one weapon system, and to make a really good warrior takes years of experience and training. So it was similar for the longbowman, but when the invention of the crossbow happened, it was way easier to use but it was more expensive and harder to create because of all the moving parts. But the trade-off there was, you can have more people less trained use it as effective as a longbow. But that's just another example of that technology being utilized. And
man.
If you want to talk about castles, we can do that real quick. I found an interesting fact about castles.
Well, tell me what you researched, man, because I know I think I can guess like when castles had their day and when that day kind of finally ended. But you tell me.
You're absolutely right. Like castles were primarily, this is before the 13th century, and that's your little hint there. But before that 13th century, like castles were primarily used as defensive fortresses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm building a castle because I am trying to keep people out and I'm trying to, protect the people in. Mm-hmm. Like it's not going to be siege. It's not going to be, we are going to defend this castle because nobody's going to be able to penetrate these walls until gunpowder showed its beautiful face and back in medieval Europe, and that was just about at the beginning of the 13th century. Mm-hmm. And then literally castles could not stand a chance.
Yeah,
like gunpowder with cannonballs would literally rip right through the walls. Mm-hmm. And soon after gunpowder was distributed, everyone was like, okay, castles are kind of useless. We're still going to use them. But it's just literally going to be to show our distinguishment and to show our class and our rich family standing order.
Yeah, like a status symbol or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true, man.
You knew they gave up when they started making castles out of brick.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where like an innovation really changes all of society.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of focused in the wartime era, it's like, oh man, we got to build our places. We got to build our houses differently and in different places. We got different considerations because now that cannonballs are rolling through,
Yeah.
our brick walls, our castles don't really mean a whole heck of a lot. And then of course, starting to innovate, those cannons get smaller and smaller. They get more handheld. All of a sudden, dudes are carrying around, and we've got to experience some of that stuff with our War Wallet episodes, even some of the handheld stuff. I don't know if you saw that they had the Shift Fire come out with the dude from the Ancient Arms, the antique Ancient Arms thing.
Yeah.
That came out.
Oh, the crazy haired guy?
Yeah,
That
the
was
crazy
not
dude.
nice. Yeah, he was not a nice guy.
Oh, no, he was a bit of a creeper. But yeah, man, it's I love the innovation. It's wild to think about. One thing will come along and then bam, all of society has changed forevermore.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What do you say, man? You wanna get into the fan question and then the game?
Absolutely. It's about to be that time. So what do we got for fan question?
Well, I got a fan question here from Parker Killian via Instagram. It says he's asking, what is y'all's take on the movies Danger Close or Siege of Jodhpur?
Okay.
I don't have an opinion because I've seen neither of these movies.
Okay.
He's got a synopsis here. Let's see. Danger Close, freelance female war reporter Alex Quaid covers start the reactor.
Quaid, start the reactor.
Free Mars. Covers U.S. Special Operations Forces on highly classified combat missions since 2001. She is embedded with elite SOF, including Special Forces, Green Berets, Army Rangers, Navy SEALs, and CIA clandestine operatives to tell their stories from the front line. Danger Close follows Alex as she lives alongside these highly trained forces on some of the most daring missions ever documented in Iraq and Afghanistan. I had no idea.
I had no idea this movie even existed.
Danger Close. I'm guessing it's a drama.
Maybe. Okay, well, Parker, we're going to have to watch that and then get back to you. I can give you an opinion on Siege of Jodhpur.
You've seen it?
Oh, yeah, I've seen it. I think it's excellent.
Cool. Right on. Okay, cool.
I think it's an excellent portrayal of it's an Irish unit that's deployed to assist the UN in an African. I think it's the Congo. Is it the Congo? Yeah, apparently stand off against troops. In the Congo. See, I didn't even read the synopsis, so I remembered against French and Belgian mercenaries that are hired by mining companies that are trying to take over, like the Congo government. So I think it's a really, I really like the movie just because the Irish military never really involved themselves in contact. They weren't in World War I. They weren't in World War II. Like they just avoided conflict. They were kind of like conflict. They were kind of like Jordan, being completely neutral.
Okay.
But finally they get deployed, and you have these guys being put in the shit that have zero operational experience. And oftentimes there's this really negative stigma that, like, if you've never been in it, we don't believe that you can, we don't believe you could do it because you've never lived it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, even with this stigma, and because like you even see it when the Irish get there, they like go into town and go into a pub and they actually meet face to face the commander of like the French and Belgian mercenaries, and they like see each other and they like have a discussion. And like the French guy, he's like, I fought in the Bush Wars. He's like, I fought in Rhodesia. He's like, I'm very experienced and I know you know nothing. So if you want to mess with us, come on, because we're going to crush you. So basically, like they don't give them the benefit of the doubt. They're just like, you're inexperienced. So if you cross us, we will kill you because we've been fighting forever. And it's not the case. Like,
wow.
So they hold them off, and we're talking like hundreds of dudes versus like a platoon of Irish people, of Irish soldiers, and they hold them off for a great chunk. They go literally black on ammo, and like at the end, the Irish commander ends up giving up. He's like, okay, we fought. He's like, I'm proud of my men. We fought. We've killed hundreds of you bastards, and we're pretty much all standing. And we're black on ammo, so we can't fight anymore. So we surrender. But, it's not what we want to do. But to save my men, I will surrender. And it was actually this whole thing where, like, they surrendered and they got captured. And then when they were released, they were all arrested by the Irish military for desertion.
What?
Yeah. And, like, basically, nobody really knew what happened. And then years later, we're talking like years later, the actual story came out and all of the men were pardoned and then given medals. And they were like, hey,
that's
sorry.
great.
Yeah, they're like, hey, sorry for like saying you're a coward for the last 2 decades. Let's here's a medal though to make up for it, you know. Thank you for your service.
Oh, that's wild, man. I would definitely like to see that. You know, it's funny. I was trying to look it up real quick. Danger Close. Danger Close, the one that's mentioned in the question, is
Yeah.
actually a documentary.
Oh, okay.
And then there's another movie, Danger Close, which it came out in 2019. That's actually a drama. It's the Battle of Long Tang, starring Travis Fimmel. I actually want to see this one. This is the one I want to see, but I don't know if it was like Battle of Long Tang during the Vietnam War. So we get a little sidetracked, but that looks kind of cool. It looks like a cool Vietnam movie that I haven't seen. So,
okay. Yeah, I haven't seen that one either. Is this? I hope this isn't the one
bad.
I'm thinking about where they have to go in like the trenches, because that movie absolutely sucked. I watched it on an airplane. I hope it's not this one. Yeah, but no, the documentary doesn't seem very well reviewed. It has 2 stars on IMDb, but as long as it's free, I will watch it.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out.
You'll have to reimburse me, Parker, if I watch it.
Yeah,
and
Parker.
I absolutely hate it.
It's on you, man. So
yeah,
Parker, thank you for the question. And now it's time for a game. I don't see a game, Cameron. So
that means I am the game master because I do see it, and I presenteth a game for thou, a game of great value and valor. If you so seeketh these things. This game is called Knights of the Wrong Table. I'm going to give you a knightly character, and you tell me which movie, game, or show they were in.
Ooh, cool. Oh, this sounds good.
Yeah. Let us beginneth. Okay. Art thou ready?
Verily, forsooth.
Okay, then we shall commence. Okay. So, pretty straightforward. I'm going to give you a medieval character, a knight, and you just tell me where they come from, if you remember. All right, so no warm-up, jumping right into it. We have 7 names here. So starting off, Frog.
Oh, my God. Frog? What the?
I have no idea.
Wait a second. I know this. I'm thinking about it way too much, man. That's from Chrono Trigger. That's from the Super Nintendo game Chrono Trigger. His name is literally Frog. And I think you can name him. So he was a knight. He was a knight who was cursed by Magus, who's an antagonist in the game, who can later become a part of your party if you play your cards right. But he's been cursed, so he is a frog. He's like a humanoid frog, but he's still an honorable knight, and he actually speaks in like the King James version, like "Verily, forsooth" and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, Frog that's from Chrono Trigger.
Well, after that very long-winded explanation, if you were wrong, that would have been disappointing. But yes, you were absolutely correct. Frog is from Chrono Trigger. I actually haven't heard of Chrono Trigger. It's old school, huh?
Yeah, it's old school, and it's kind of it's like high up in terms of classic role-playing games or RPGs.
Oh, okay.
It's one of the best because, just quick side note, it was a game that was created by all of the great RPG creators, like the music guy and the story guy and the artist, and they all happened to like not be doing anything else, so they came together and they made this game, and it just it's one of the most beloved role RPGs in video game history. You know, it's kind of
wow. I've actually even looking into it, I've never seen this before.
It's the same guy who does Dragon Ball Z, the artwork.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Oh, I can totally see that. Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing. I think there's like 19 different endings because it's all about time travel. So if you beat it once, then when you go back into it, there's a spot where you can jump right. You keep all your abilities and skills. You can jump right to the end at any point in the story, and that will change the ending once you beat the main bad guy. So yeah, anyway.
Oh, that's super interesting. Okay. Well, yeah, you got that one. All right. Yeah. Long-winded explanation. We're going to move right along.
Okay.
Jorah Mormont.
I literally just watched a clip for the episode today of him fighting a dude. He's in Game of Thrones. He is loyal to Daenerys Targaryen. And in the first season, when she has like no power and no friends, he gets into a fight to defend her and her decisions with a horse guy. And the horse lords are like all about like quick and nimble. They don't wear armor because it's too cumbersome, and they have like curved swords. And he's like all in his knight like medieval armor, and it looks like the other dude's gonna win because he's like jumping all around and he's like moving fast. And then the guy swings at him, and George just like catches his sword in his armpit, like in the plate, and stops it and just hacks the dude right in the face. Because it's like he doesn't need to be all moving around.
A perfect example of loyalty, Sir Jorah Mormont.
Yeah,
absolutely right, man. Yeah,
cool,
Game of Thrones, cool. All right, here we go. William Thatcher.
William Thatcher. Ooh, that does not sound familiar. I was gonna say Will Turner is Pirates of the Caribbean. William Thatcher. Only for the sake of time, man. I'm not going to stress myself out too much because I nerded out over the other answers. William Thatcher does not sound familiar to me. Maybe let's throw a random movie out there. William Thatcher. I don't know. The Witcher. I don't know, man.
Okay. No, not The Witcher. He is indeed one of my favorite knights. A Knight's Tale.
Oh, I never saw it.
You never seen Knight's Tale? Oh my God.
Freaking out.
Yeah, no, I'm freaking out because that's like one of the movies that like makes me bawl like a little baby.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's a great movie.
Shannon Southman is like a cinematic death to me. I don't want to say
I
hate her acting.
You don't like her, yeah.
So anyway.
Well, she's not like okay, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm not gonna be like she's not that much in the movie. Yeah, she's a lot in the movie. But no, it's a good movie. So if you can like just kind of like block her out.
All right. Block out half the movie. All right, cool, man.
Yeah,
You've talked about. I know the part where you get all when he comes home
when he's like,
father.
did she find his stars? And then I'm just like, yeah, it's so good. Okay, but for the sake of time, moving along so I don't cry. Plo Koon.
Plo Koon is he's from Star Wars. He's a Jedi Knight.
Wow.
Yeah, he's one of that. Yeah, Plo Koon. It's so funny because the only time I'd ever seen him or knew about him was he gets like one shot and he gets blown up in Revenge of the Sith. And then you go back and watch the cartoon Clone Wars and he has like totally a larger part. I'm like, oh, Plo Koon, he actually did a lot. But in the movies, you'll see him.
Yeah, in the movies, he's kind of like that background guy.
Yeah. He doesn't really do much. And then he gets killed. It's like, oh, all right, Plo Koon.
No. I probably should have told you you're right before like chiming in and being like, yeah, he's totally doing this thing. Because like, what if you're wrong? But you're totally not wrong. But okay, yeah, you definitely got that. Plo Koon is like the biggest background Jedi ever in the movies. But moving right along, Navarre.
Navarre,
Navarre, Navarre.
That's Etienne Navarre from Lady Hawk, man. Dude, he's the main. That's played by Rutger Hauer, with Michelle Pfeiffer and a very young, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. The name escapes me, but anyway, and Etienne Navarre, man, he's cursed to be a wolf at night and a guy during the day. She's cursed to be a hawk during the day and a woman at night, and they can never quite be together. Like that's the curse. Oh, if you've never seen Lady Hawk, dude, it's great, man. I cry in that movie, but I cry at a lot of movies, so it's not really a fair assessment.
It's not fair assessment. Yeah, dude, it's crazy what you remember out of like these super obscure movies.
Yeah. I don't remember like classic tomes of poetry and math, but I can remember Lady Hawk.
Yeah, Lady Hawk Navarre. Yeah, absolutely. You even remembered her first name. It wasn't even on here, but good for you. But okay, yeah, I don't even have to tell you. You're right. You're absolutely right. But moving on, Cecil.
Cecil is the main character of Final Fantasy. It was 2 in the States, but it's 5 in Japan. Cecil is a knight for a kingdom, and then he's the main character. He's a dark knight in the first half of the video game, and then he goes on a quest to kind of cleanse himself, and then he becomes a white knight or a knight of light. But he's the main character from Final Fantasy V.
Okay, well, you're right. Chris has Final Fantasy.
Wait, was he the
4.
Dragoon? Was he a dragoon? Or because there's Cecil and then
you're coming at me.
There's 2 guys, they're friends. But yeah, Final Fantasy 4? Oh.
It says Final Fantasy 4, but it's Final Fantasy, and you like described him to a T.
Yeah. So it was different because they released them. There were other Final Fantasies that they released in Japan that they didn't release in America for a long time. And so there was Final Fantasy and then Final Fantasy 2, which was Final Fantasy, the one we're talking about, and then Final Fantasy 3, which was my favorite one. But that was actually I thought it was 5 and 6, but maybe it was 4 and 6. So anyway, but
Okay, well, anyways, you are absolutely right.
Cecil and Kane. Kane is his buddy.
Cecil
Okay.
Oh, nice, Chris. All right, final one. Good luck on this one. Michael Knight.
I mean, the Knight Rider?
Yeah, you got it. I had no idea this was a movie, but yeah, you totally got it. It looks absolutely ridiculous.
Dude, David Hasselhoff, man, that's like what put him on the map, like made him a household name in America in the 80s, man. Michael Knight.
So
The
this
theme
is
song?
so this is not what you're thinking.
Oh, really?
But you
It's
still
not?
got it right.
Oh,
You just-
okay.
You're just missing one letter, but pronunciation doesn't change. So
Oh, okay,
instead of
Michael
night,
Knight.
as in Night,
Nighttime. Yeah.
it's Knight Rider,
yeah.
and it's
yeah.
literally about Ed Harris and Tom Savini, and Ed Harris is a knight back in the day who's riding a Harley around.
Oh my gosh, you totally got me, man. Oh, okay. Knight Rider, but it's like it's not the show with David Hasselhoff.
No, but you still got it right
Oh.
because you said Knight Rider. Literally, just Google Knight Rider with the
Just
K
knew-
right now.
so I was right in the wrong sort of way.
You were right in the wrong way, but you still said it. You're like Knight Rider, so it counts.
Okay, all right. Yeah, if I only had not said anything else, but yes, that's what I meant. I meant the one with Ed Harris.
Yeah. Oh my God, who made this movie? Who's that? George A. Romero. Oh man, I don't know. Okay, but yeah, man, that's the game.
All right,
you did,
man. Well, all right.
did very well. I mean, you got to watch A Knight's Tale, but you went 6 out of 7, so good deal there, buddy.
All right, man. I'll take it. I'll take the win.
Oh yeah, you're a winner in my eyes.
Chris really knows how to make a game for me, especially because what does a nerd love to do but remember all the things and talk about all the things that he or she loves? And so it's like, oh, you get to talk about give me all the highlights and I'll give you all the in between,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, folks, Izzy's a winner here, and so are you. You've made it to the end of this week's episode of the Pop Culture Field Manual podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very happy to have you part of our PCFM community, so stay tuned until next week. And Izzy, if you got anything?
Nah, man. Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you on the next episode.
All right, and cue music.
Well, shopping for a car?
Yep, Carvana made financing a car as smooth as can be.
Oh, yeah?
I got pre-qualified instantly and had real terms personalized just for me.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
Well, I got to browse thousands of car options on Carvana, all within my budget.
Doesn't get much smoother than that.
It does. I actually wanted a car that seemed out of my range, but I was able to add a cosigner and found my dream car.
It doesn't get much...
Oh, it gets smoother. It's getting delivered tomorrow.
Visit Carvana.com or download the app to get pre-qualified today.
New on CuriosityStream,
I'm James Burke. I'm going to take you on a journey through time.
James Burke's visionary series returns, reimagined for our time.
Now, this is all uncharted territory.
The Washington Post hails Burke as one of the most intriguing minds in the Western world. The New York Times raves he careens from one great moment in history to another.
Where do we want to go from here?
Experience all new connections.
So what's the next connection?
With monthly, annual, and bundled plans, find the one that works for you at CuriosityStream.com.